Janet Yellen is totally freaking out. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. We could default on our debt. I cannot tell you how bad that would be on every single level. But I can also tell you, I really don't think it's going to happen. I mean, I have certainly been wrong before, but this is one where, you know what, if it were about to happen, any of the crazies out there in Congress that like couldn't come to some kind of deal, like somebody's going to hold them up and say, hey, wait a second, because this is serious. Anyway, Janet Yellen went on CNBC, again, my former network, to push this whole idea that, you know, it's really not fair that the Republicans are the ones holding things up because, gosh darn it, they won't cut, or they won't allow us to keep all this green energy. They want us to cut green energy. Gosh, that's not fair, right? Listen.
The president set out a detailed budget. In that budget, he invests in America. He cuts wasteful and inefficient spending and lowers deficits over 10 years by $3 trillion. But so he and I regard it as a fiscally responsible proposal. The Republicans have very different ideas. They want to focus on cutting spending, and the proposals that they've set out would entail draconian cuts and really end the policies we've put in place to invest in our economy in clean energy.
Oh, God forbid. Wait, you mean you might actually have to stop investing in clean energy? Oh dear, because you want to avoid a default? Gosh, those mean Republicans, how could they do such a thing? I mean, I'm sorry, but like I say this all the time. Sometimes you can do a certain amount, right? As a government, you want to promote certain policies, et cetera, but you can only do so much. Like at some point, it's really up to the market and it's up to consumers. I mean, they can't force us to drink Bud Light, right? And they can't force us to drive EVs, right? But they think they can. So they've got some really top-down, heavy-handed methods that they're trying to engage in, including, by the way, for how long they didn't care about sky-high energy prices. They didn't care until the data showed up in the polls. And you know why that is? Because they're not out there having to shop for groceries. They're not trying to feed a family. They're not trying to make ends meet every single week. I mean, these are people, and don't even get me started. I was just looking at some of the stock trades that some of these individuals have been engaging in because apparently, you know, they don't have the same rules for insider trading as the rest of us. And so they're able to gather information and then trade on that information, and they're doing just fine, right? Like they're sitting pretty. But everyday Americans that don't have that access to information, everyday Americans that are actually going to work every day, earning an honest living, just trying to pay the bills, they're actually really affected by these higher energy prices and higher food prices. And consequently, finally, Biden woke up and said, okay, I guess we're going to drill in Alaska now, right? Because his poll numbers are so bad. This inflation thing is so bad. And so now they're going to say it's the Republicans' fault, those mean, terrible, awful Republicans, because they are not willing to allow us to keep spending on something that is so important as green energy. Well, if it's so important, why doesn't the market figure this out? Elon Musk figured it out. I mean, hey, the guy was like toiling away, working on his EVs, saying, I think there's an opportunity here. And he believed it with such passion. And you know what? A lot of people bought his cars. And he figured out the market for that. I'm telling you, if energy on its own got shut off all around the world, tomorrow we would figure it out, just like we did, by the way, during March 2020. I'm here in my studio talking to you live as though it's like a real TV place, right? Like we figured it out. Zoom suddenly became incredibly popular because Americans are resourceful, and Americans, when in crisis, figure out how to manage this. I mean, that is just how it's always been. And frankly, while the government can do things on the margin, it is critical that it actually be market driven. Otherwise, it's not going to last. It brings us right back full circle to Bud Light, Anheuser-Busch, when you don't understand the market and you don't understand what customers want, what do you get? Well, we know what you get.